Hi guys, Reverend Crystal Cox here from Bringing Back Goddess Church, and I'm going to read to you a little bit out of the book called The Sermon on the Mount, The Key to Success in Life by Emmett Fox. Now, this book, this book was written in 1934, and it's been around a while, and it's been reprinted over and over. It's really good stuff. I'm going to read you the back first of this one. I definitely suggest you read it again. Emmett Fox. Emmett spelled E-M-M-E-T. It says, up above it says, Emmett Fox was one of the world's greatest metaphysical teachers. His works have contributed profoundly to the spiritual understanding of millions of people, including myself, Marion Williamson. All right, on the back it says, The Timeless Manual for Harmonious Living. One of the foremost spiritual teachers of the 20th century, Emmett Fox offers people of all faiths powerful strategies and practical guidelines for bringing health, happiness, and true prosperity into their lives and the lives of others. Treasured by over 1 million seekers, this enduring spiritual classic reveals how to transform negative attitudes into life-affirming beliefs, understand the nature of divine wisdom, tap into the power of prayer, develop a completely integrated and fully expressed personality, and claim our divine right to all of life's abundance. Fox shares the keys to shaping our lives into what we really want them to be. A practical handbook of spiritual development. Fox gives his readers a profound outlook upon life and an absolutely fresh scale of values. Emmett Fox was born in 1886 and he died in 1951. He was one of the most influential spiritual leaders of the 20th century and a pioneer of the New Thought movement. His bold, dynamic message that our thoughts shape our reality has changed the lives of millions across the world and influenced many key contemporary spiritual writers such as Wayne Dyer, Esther Hicks, and Louise Hay, all of whom have tapped into his belief in the power of positive thinking. Fox's other key works include Around the Year with Emmett Fox and Power Through Constructive Thinking. This is a really good book. I have studied a lot of information on the power of thoughts and how our thoughts create our reality, but also how our mind and prayer changes the chemical makeup of water, which, we're mostly made up of water, and of course the earth has so much water on it. If we as humans take control of our own minds, just sitting in our homes, we can do so much to change our own lives, the lives of others, the lives of those we know, those we don't know, and the earth, Mother Earth, and her water, and the animals, and we just have to learn the power of our own mind. Kind of the best kept secret and why they keep us constantly distracted with so many things. All right, so I'm going to start with chapter 1. Chapter 1 is What Did Jesus Teach? Jesus Christ is easily the most important figure that has ever appeared in the history of mankind. It makes no difference how you may regard him. You will have to concede that. That is true whether you choose to call him God or man. And if man, whether you choose to consider him as the world's greatest prophet and teacher, or merely as a well-intentioned fanatic who came to grief and failure and ruin after a short and stormy public career. However you regard him, the fact will remain that the life and death of Jesus and the teachings attributed to him have influenced the course of human history more than those of any other man who has ever lived. More than Alexander or Caesar or Charlemagne or Napoleon or Washington, more people's lives are influenced by his doctrines, or at least by the doctrines attributed to him today. More books are written and read and bought concerning him, more speeches are made, call them sermons, concerning him, than concerning all the other names mentioned put together. Two have been the religious inspiration of the whole European race throughout the 2 millenniums during which that race has dominated and molded the destinies of the entire world culturally and socially, as well as politically, and through the period in which the whole of the earth's surface was finally discovered and occupied, and in its broad outlines shaped by civilization, this alone entitles him to the premier position in world importance. There can hardly, therefore, be a more important undertaking than to inquire into the question of what Jesus really did stand for. What did Jesus teach? What did he really wish us to believe and to do? What are the objects that he really had at heart? And how far did he actually succeed in accomplishing these objects in his life and in his death? How far has the religion or movement called Christianity, as it has existed for the last 19 centuries, really expressed or represented his ideas? How far does the Christianity of today present his message to the world? If he should come back now, what would he say of the self-styled Christian nations in general, and of the Christian churches in particular? Of the Anglicans, the Baptists, the Catholics, the Greek Orthodox, the Methodists, the Presbyterians, the Quakers, the Salvationists, the Seventh-day Adventists, or the Unitarians, to cite them alphabetically. What did Jesus teach? This is the question which I have set myself to answer in this book. I propose to show that the message which Jesus brought has a unique value because it is the truth, and the only perfect statement of the truth of the nature of God and of man and of life and of the world and of the relationship which exists between them. And far more than this, we shall find that his teaching is not a mere abstract account of the universe, which would be of very little more than academic interest, but that it constitutes a practical method for the development of the soul and for the shaping of our lives and the destiny into the things that we really wish them to be. Jesus explains to us what the nature of God is and what our own intention and our nature is. Tells us the meaning of life and of death, shows us why we make mistakes, why we yield to temptation, why we become sick and impoverished and old. And most of all, he tells us how all these evils may be overcome and how we may bring health, happiness, and true prosperity into our lives and into the lives of others, if they really wish for them too. The first thing that we have to realize is a fact of fundamental importance, because it means breaking away from all the ordinary prepossessions of orthodoxy. The plain fact is that Jesus taught no theology whatever. His teaching is entirely spiritual or metaphysical. Historically, Christianity, unfortunately, has largely concerned itself with theological and doctrinal questions which, strange to say, have no part whatever in the gospel teaching. It will startle many good people to learn that all the doctrines and theologies of the churches are human inventions built upon their own authors out of their... Okay, let me start that sentence. It'll startle many people to learn that all the doctrines and theologies of the churches are human inventions built up by their authors out of their own mentalities and foisted upon the Bible from the outside. But such is the case. There is absolutely no system of theology of doctrine to be found in the Bible. It is simply not there. Worthy people who felt the need of some intellectual explanation of life and also believed that the Bible was a revelation of God to man drew the natural conclusion that one must be within the other, and then, more or less unconsciously, proceeded to manufacture the thing that they wished to find. They did not have the spiritual or metaphysical key. They were not upon what is called the spiritual basis, and consequently they sought a purely intellectual or three-dimensional explanation of life, and there can be no such explanation. The actual explanation of man's life lies in just the fact that he is essentially spiritual and eternal, and that this world and the life that we know intellectually is, so to speak, but a cross-section of the full truth concerning him, and a cross-section of anything, from a machine to a horse, never can furnish even a partial explanation of the whole. Glimpsing one tiny corner of the universe, and that with only half-opened eyes, and working from an exclusively anthropocentric and geocentric point of view, men built up absurd and very horrible fables about a limited and manlike God who conducted his universe very much as a rather ignorant and barbarous prince might conduct the affairs of a small oriental kingdom. All sorts of human weaknesses, such as vanity, fickleness, and spite, were attributed to this being. Then a far-fetched and very inconsistent legend was built up concerning original sin, vicarious blood atonement, infinite punishment for finite transgressions, and in certain cases an utterly horrible doctrine of predestination to eternal torment or eternal bliss was added. Now, no such theory as this is taught in the Bible. If it were the object of the Bible to teach it, it would be clearly stated in a straightforward manner in some chapter or another, but it is not. The plan of salvation, which figured so prominently in the evangelical sermons and divinity books of a past generation, is as completely unknown to the Bible as it is to the Quran. There never was any such arrangement in the universe, and the Bible does not teach it at all. What has happened is that certain obscure texts from Genesis, a few phrases taken here and there from Paul's letters, and one or two isolated verses from other parts of the Scriptures have been taken out and pieced together by divines to produce the kind of teaching which it seemed to them ought to have been found in the Bible. Jesus knows nothing of all of this. He is indeed anything but a Pollyanna, as they say, or a cheap optimist. He warns us not once but often that obstinacy in sin can bring very, very severe punishment in its train, and that a man who parts with the integrity of his soul, even though he gain the whole world, is a tragic fool. But he teaches that we are only punished for, and actually punished by, our own mistakes. And he teaches that every man or woman, no matter how steeped in evil and uncleanliness, has always direct access to an all-loving, all-powerful Father God who will forgive him and supply his own strength to him to enable him to find himself again, and unto 70 times 7, if need be. Jesus has been sadly misunderstood and misrepresented in other directions too. For instance, there is no warrant whatever in his teachings for the setting up of any form of ecclesiasticism or of any hierarchy of officials or systems of ritual. He did not authorize any such thing, and in fact, the whole tone of his mentality is definitely anti-ecclesiastical. All through his public life, he was at war with the ecclesiastics and other religious officials of his own country. They first hindered and then persecuted him. With a perfectly sound instinct of self-preservation, they felt instinctively that the truth, as he taught it, was the beginning of the end for them, and they finally had him put to death. Their pretensions to authority as the representatives of God has ignored completely, and for their ritual and their ceremonies he invites only impatience and contempt. It seems that human nature is very prone to believe what it wants to believe, rather than to incur the labor of really searching the Scriptures with an open mind. Perfectly sincere men, for example, have appointed themselves Christian leaders and the most imposing and pretentious titles, then clothe themselves in elaborate and gorgeous vestments, the better to impress the people in spite of the fact that their master, in the plainest language, strictly charged his followers that they must do nothing of the kind. Quote, "But be ye not called rabbi, For one is your master, even Christ, and all ye are brethren. Matthew 23:8. And he denounced the Pharisees as hypocrites because they love the chief seats and bind heavy burdens, grievous to be borne, with all sorts of rules and regulations. Jesus, as we shall discover later on, made a special point of discouraging the laying of emphasis upon outer observance, and indeed upon hard and fast rules and regulations of every kind. What he insisted upon was a certain spirit in one's conduct, and he was careful to teach principles only, knowing that when the spirit is right, details will take care of themselves, and that in fact the letter killeth, but the spirit giveth life. As was so obviously seen in the sad example of the Pharisees. Yet in spite of this, the history of Orthodox Christianity is largely made up of attempts to enforce all sorts of external observances upon the people. A striking case and illustration of this is the Puritan attempt to enforce the Old Testament Sabbath upon Christians, although the Sabbath law was a purely Hebrew ordinance, and the ferocious penalties involved in neglecting it applied exclusively to the desecration of Saturday, and in spite of the fact that Jesus particularly discouraged superstitious Sabbath observation, saying that the Sabbath was made for man and not man for the Sabbath, and making a point of doing anything that he wanted to do upon that day. He clearly indicates throughout his teachings that the time has come when man must make each and every day a spiritual Sabbath by knowing and doing all things in spiritual light. And I just want to make a note here. I completely believe in this, and Bringing Back God as Church is completely about this, about everyday ministry, everyday spirituality, living in a way of loving thy neighbor and spreading love and in prayer and in constant connection with Spirit. That every day is a spiritual day. Every day you're in connection with Spirit and connection with Mother Earth. It is not about 2 hours on Sunday. You know, we have these buildings all across the land where a lot of these churches, there's only 2 hours a week that they are giving a sermon, when people are in need every day, all day. And so it's about spirituality all the time, every single day. It goes on to say, it is obvious that even if the Hebrew Sabbath were binding upon Christians, then since they do not observe it in keeping Sunday, they will still incur all the consequences of Sabbath breaking. Many modern Christians do, however, realize that there is no system of theology in the Bible, unless one likes to put it there deliberately, and they have practically given up theology altogether. But they still cling to Christianity because they feel intuitively that it is the truth. There is really no logical justification for their attitude, since they do not possess the spiritual key which alone makes the teachings of Jesus intelligible. And so they endeavor to rationalize their attitude in various ways. This is the dilemma of the man who has neither the blind faith of orthodoxy nor the spiritual interpretation of scientific Christianity to support him. He has not a leg to stand on that does not belong to the old-fashioned Unitarian. If he does not reject miracles altogether, he is at least very uneasy about them. They embarrass him, and he wishes that they were not in the Bible at all, and would be glad in his heart to be well rid of them. And I'm going to stop the reading there, but miracles like hands-on healing stuff that Jesus did, people are doing today. Energy work, this stuff is real. The power of thoughts, knowing your own mind. This is about non-judgmental spirituality. It is about being Christian and being Christ-like, doing what Christ would do and not judging each other. And if your Bible or your theology, your religious belief, it persecutes other people, then it's my opinion that this is not Christian. This is not Buddhist. This is not really of what the Wiccan, pagan, all of these spiritualities that really do have a higher base, a higher spirituality, and really are of the light. When you're judging other people in a way of their spiritual belief and persecuting them for what they believe, then to me this is not of the highest and best good spiritually. Anyway, again, this book is Emmett Fox's The Sermon on the Mount. And I really enjoyed the book, and I'm going to read a lot more to you folks about it. And I just want to say God bless you, and I hope you have a great day. Take care out there.